Okay, doing some more work with functions. We're going to look at the algebra functions, looking at how we can do operations with entire functions. So we've got 4 of them listed out here: the sum, difference, product, and quotient. So you're going to want to make sure that you have those in your notes. And the key thing to remember is that the domain of each of those functions, whether it's the sum or the difference, product, quotient, the domains are going to be the set of real numbers that are common to both f and g. Okay, so in order for something to be in the domain of the sum of 2 functions, it had to be in the domain of both functions to begin with. That's why this little upside down U here at the bottom, that means the intersection. Okay, so this right here means the intersection of those 2 functions. It means what do they have in common. So if I want something to be in the domain of f plus g, it means it's got to be in f and it's got to be in g before we even start. So only the things that are defined for both functions can be in the new function. So we've got f of x equals 2x minus 1, and g of x is x squared plus x minus 2. And we want to find f plus g of x. Well, remember that f plus g of x is simply f of x plus g of x. So we have 2x minus 1 plus x squared plus x minus 2. And it's just a matter of combining like terms. So that's going to give us x squared plus 3x and minus 3. There's our new function. And what is the domain? Well, to get the domain, I need to know the domain of each of the previous functions. So the domain of f is a linear function, so that's negative infinity to infinity. The domain of g is a quadratic. Well, I can square anything and I can add any number to that. So this domain is also negative infinity to infinity. So the domain of the sum, again, negative infinity to infinity. It's all the numbers that are part of the domain of each f and g. Okay? So let's look at f minus g of x. F minus g of x means we're going to take f of x, 2x minus 1, and we are going to subtract the g of x. Okay. So I have to subtract the whole function, which means I'm going to end up distributing the negative. So 2x minus 1 minus x squared minus x and plus 2. So what we end up with here is a negative x squared. I got 2x minus x, which is plus x, and I have negative 1 plus 2, which is 1. And again, the domain is still going to be negative infinity to infinity. Okay? So, part C, the product, f times g of x. Well, that simply says take f of x and multiply it with g of x. So we've got distributive property. We're going to have 2x cubed plus 2x squared minus 4x minus x squared minus x and plus 2. So our final function is 2x cubed. I've got 2x squared minus x squared, which is a plus x squared. Minus 4 minus 1 is minus 5x and plus 2. And again, our domain, negative infinity to infinity. Okay. So, pretty straightforward, pretty simple. If it's addition of functions, add the 2 functions together. If it's subtraction, subtract them. Okay. The thing with subtraction is don't forget that you have to distribute that negative. That's the key thing there to remember. Okay. And then the product is just using distributive property. Multiply it out. Okay. So let's look at f divided by g of x. What's that going to look like? Okay. Well, what was f of x? F of x was 2x minus 1, and g of x was x squared. Okay. X squared plus x minus 2. Okay. So in the quotient, now when we're talking about domain, we have to be careful. Okay. Because remember, we cannot allow that x squared plus x minus 2, we can't allow any x's that are going to make that equal to 0. So we have to figure out which x's are going to have to be excluded now. what things do we have to leave out? Well, that would factor to x plus 2 and x minus 1. So I'd have negative 2 and positive 1 as my solutions. So my domain here is going to be negative infinity up to negative 2. Union or join that with the group between negative 2 and 1. And join that with the group from 1 to infinity. Okay? Thereby excluding the negative 2 and the positive 1 by using the parentheses and showing that those things are not part of the domain. They're not part of the group. Okay. So, f of x is square root of x plus 3. G of x is square root of x minus 2. I want you, in your notes, to write down, find f plus g of x, and what is the domain of f plus g. Okay. So I want you to do that one, and that will be checked in class. Okay. Next thing, here is a graph, okay, and here is the problem underneath it, where you're given the two functions. Okay, both of those are quadratic functions. And I want you to complete parts A, B, and C for class tomorrow. Okay? So you're going to be using all the information there that you need is right there for you. Okay? Here's your two functions, B and D. And you're going to use those to complete parts A, B, and C in your notes. And again, this is something that I'm going to check tomorrow. Okay? So I want to check to see that you're trying these problems, doing these problems. And again, what I would like you also to do, in addition to those few problems, is to write a summary. Okay. And it can be in your own words. Write a summary of what was discussed in this lesson. What did you learn? Okay. Put it in your own words. Use examples if you want, but I want a write-up. Okay. I want something written out in words explaining what you learned from this lesson. Okay, we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks.